Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the next 3 hours. Love for you to jump in here. You can call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. The only segment where I can't talk to you is when Rookie from 107.5 The Fan in Green Bay joins me in the next segment to preview Sunday's big-time matchup between the Packers and the Broncos. I'd like to start with hockey, though. With the 1996 Stanley Cup champions in the building last night at Ball Arena, this year's version of the Avalanche put a beat down on the Panthers that would have to remind that 96 team of what they did to the Florida Panthers in Game 2 of their series. The Avs, they jumped on the double champs immediately. They looked like they were shot out of a cannon in that game. 1 minute, 14 seconds in, Sam Malinsky scores, and the Avs didn't look back. And they didn't let up. They doubled up the Panthers in shots for almost the entirety of the game, had countless odd man rushes. They just looked not just the superior team, but the far superior team up and down the lineup. Every single line, every single D pairing. And they had the better of the two goaltenders as well. 6 different goal scorers last night in the Avs 6-2 win. Now, it has to be said, the Panthers they faced last night are not the Panthers who have lifted the last 2 Stanley Cups. Or lifted the Stanley Cup the last 2 years, to be more accurate. That's not that team. They don't have Matthew Tkachuk for a couple more weeks at least. And who knows when they're going to get back Alexander Barkov. You know, I watched this team live and in person, and you get a different feel for a team when you see them live as opposed to when you see them on TV. I had the chance to go because I had an off day when I was down in Florida during Thanksgiving week. Went and watched the Panthers play the Flames. Flames aren't a very good team. And Florida was the lesser of the two teams. They're not the same. And I think it starts with Barkov. Everything they do, their entire identity is wrapped around what Alexander Barkov does. He would be the guy last night that was going up against Nathan MacKinnon. Right, as he's gone up against either Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid in the last couple of Stanley Cup finals. He's the best defensive center in the NHL. And everything Florida does to teams starts with him, and it's made possible because of him. I'm not saying that Barkov shuts down Nathan MacKinnon, but what I will tell you is if Alexander Barkov is playing in that game, you don't see Nathan MacKinnon get that many clean entries into the attacking zone. And you don't see him get off a game-high 7 shots like he did last night. Florida had no answer for Nathan MacKinnon in that game, who with his goal, he also had an assist. One, increases his points lead in the NHL. First player this season to go over 50 points. But with the goal, passes Joe Sakic, a member of that 96 Stanley Cup team, as you recall, for the most goals in Avalanche history. Here's his head coach on getting to watch Nathan MacKinnon blossom into arguably the best player on planet Earth.
I mean, whenever you have a guy with that type of determination and leadership style, you want him to have success and you want him to be firing on all cylinders. And he was a horse on the puck tonight. Like, it was – I can't keep track of his milestones because it seems like he's getting one every game. So I don't even know which one you're talking about, but he was really good tonight.
He was, and he might have been too much for even Alexander Barkov. But without Barkov in there, the Florida Panthers were completely powerless to stop Nathan MacKinnon. And by extension, the Colorado Avalanche. They didn't stop anybody on the Avalanche all night. But they're missing their best two players. But therein lies the symbolism of last night, I think. Just you take in the entire picture. 96 team in the building for obvious reasons, right? What a great time to celebrate them in this 30th anniversary season. Then by honoring them before the Avs play the team that they beat to win the franchise's first Stanley Cup. But take that into account. Take into account who Florida is, because they could be the worst team in the NHL the last couple of years, and the Avs would still find last night to be the perfect time to honor that 96 team. But you throw on top of it the fact that this Florida team, well, not that one, as I just discussed, that team doesn't exist right now. But the franchise that has won the last two Stanley Cups. And the Avs destroy them. The symbolism in last night's game and the message that I think the Avalanche were sending, it felt like the Avs were trying to send a message, either trying to impress the 96 team or trying to send a message to Florida, the two-time defending champions, and by extension, the rest of the NHL. The Avalanche last night were Killmonger standing over T'Challa in Black Panther yelling to the crowd, "Is this your king?" That's what the Avalanche did to Florida last night. Florida, because of these injuries, has vacated their throne. That team that I saw in person a couple weeks ago and watched last night against the Avs is not winning a Stanley Cup. They may not even make the playoffs. So the throne is open in the NHL. And what the Avalanche did last night and what they continue to do all season so far is slay everyone separating them from that throne. It was an extension of what this season has already been for the Avs, but it felt like they even took it up a notch at the expense of a woefully undermanned Florida Panthers team. If you hadn't watched a single NHL game this season, that game would have told you everything you need to know. Florida, as currently constructed, is not getting anywhere close to the Stanley Cup final. And the team that looks most primed to take over for them as Stanley Cup champions is the Avalanche. The Avalanche are both, right now, the best offensive and defensive team in hockey. They would be only the fourth team in NHL history to be able to say that. And two of the teams that happened before that were part of that Montreal Canadiens dynasty in the 70s. The best run of success from any franchise ever. That's the company that the Avalanche would be joining if they keep this up. If they keep this up, they will surpass the Boston Bruins for the most points by a team in NHL history. and they're on pace. Math is not my strong suit, but using my calculator, they won't just surpass Boston. They'll run right past them. They'll pass Boston, and they'll still have a handful of games left the way they're going. You are potentially watching history being made if you tune in to the Avalanche right now. And on an individual level, talked about Nathan MacKinnon. Cale Makar had an assist last night. He's now 5 points clear of anybody else at his position in terms of scoring. They both seem to be primed to winning multiple trophies once the season is over. And right now, the only team that I can say, as I survey the NHL landscape, the only team that can be a match for the Avs is Dallas. There's not another team close to playing the level of hockey that really both of those teams are playing right now. Dallas is an unfortunate case because they're living in the Avs shadow. But they're 9 points clear of everybody else in the West. Dallas is. And the Avs are 4 points clear of them. These two teams are both essentially doing what Winnipeg did last year, which is run away from everyone. But here's the thing. Not only is it two teams that are running away from everybody, the Avs and Dallas both at this point combined have lost 8 times in regulation. At this time last year, the Jets that were off to that historic start had lost 9 in regulation. It's not only two teams playing like the Jets did last season, they're playing better. They're sustaining it for longer than even Winnipeg could last year. It really, I know, long season, but man, a lot has got to change to keep us from this collision course between the Avs and the Stars. They both seem incredibly eager to get to it and have the two of them match up. And with the state of affairs with the Florida Panthers, that be the de facto Stanley Cup final. And because, as an aside, because the NHL has the worst playoff seeding scenarios or seeding in all of sport, that's not even going to be the Western Conference final. Which is another black mark on this nonsense. It's the best playoff in all of sport. And the way they put teams into the bracket is the worst way that any sport does. But that's neither here nor there. Fact of the matter is, we're going to see Colorado and Dallas again. It's inevitable. And right now, it looks like you cannot even bring up a third team that would be in the mix with those two. They are lapping the field already, and we're not even to Christmas. But, again, the symbolism of last night with the 96 team in the building, going against the Florida Panthers, who currently are the 2-time defending champions. It was right there, right in front of your face. The Avs were sending a message saying, this is who we are, and you, Florida, are not what you were the previous 2 years. And we're going to show you that in a big way and impress the 96 team. By the way, here's Jared Bednar on how good it was to have those teams in the building for a lot of different reasons.
It's a great reminder of where our team's trying to go. Number one, it's great for all the present guys to meet some of the guys from the past that they've watched, I'm sure, and that, have a legacy built here, kind of laid the foundation for our team and the way we want to play. And, Joe was obviously a big part of that, right? He was there. leading those teams. He's here leading our team.
719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Avs. Coming up next, the Broncos may have a chance to send a message of their own Sunday against Green Bay. Do the Packers feel the same way about this game? Rookie from the Fan 107.5 in Green Bay next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Well, the best matchup of Week 15 of the NFL is in Denver Sunday as the top seed in the AFC. Denver Broncos host the Packers, who currently sit as the second seed in the NFC. Joining me now, making his triumphant return to the program, is Rookie, the outstanding host on Sports Radio 107.5 and 1400 The Fan, and in Green Bay. Rookie, good to talk to you. Good to see you. How are you been?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you? And first of all, my apologies for yesterday.
Oh, you're all good. All good. I appreciate you being flexible and joining us today. Does it feel a little like 1997 right now with these two teams sitting where they are?
It's not that vibe up here in Green Bay. That got mentioned on my show a little bit this morning because I think your listeners know that I grew up in Denver, or a suburb of Arvada. Shout out to the Arvada West Wildcats, class of '84. So I've got a little Denver and Broncos still in my heart. We did reference that a little bit. There's not a big, rich history between these two teams, right? They've only played, I think, 15 times during the regular season. And then, of course, the one Super Bowl. So it's not like they're hated here in Green Bay. And, a lot of people don't even remember that Super Bowl, or maybe weren't even born when that Super Bowl was played.
Knife to my heart, Rookie.
Wow. I was born, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was too. I was too. But the consequence of this game, the Denver Broncos, I think in their fan base is very much looking at this as kind of a measuring stick, maybe the ability to cement their case as a Super Bowl contender. Is that the way that the Packers and their fans are seeing this one?
Well, I think that's fair. I think it's fair for both teams, right? The Packers they cemented their confidence a little bit over the past couple of weeks when they went into Detroit on Thanksgiving Day and beat the Lions, and then beating the Bears last week at Lambeau Field. That certainly boosted the confidence of the fans. I certainly think that if you can go on the road and beat an 11-2 football team, that's even going to up the ante a little bit. But their eyes, I think the fact that it's a cross-conference game loses a little bit of its luster, even though they're two really solid football teams that can make the argument that they're Super Bowl contenders. Because I know coming back next week, turning right around, they've got the Bears again in Chicago. And in all likelihood, first place in the division is going to be on the line again, unless somehow Green Bay beats Denver and Cleveland beats Chicago. Then the Packers would have a game and a half lead. But I think everybody's really eyeing next week as, a battle for first place in the NFC North. So I do think it's a measuring stick. I think people realize it's a measuring stick. But going back to what I said, I think it loses a little bit of that luster because it's cross-conference.
And I've made the case that I kind of feel like with these two teams, and this applies to a lot of teams right now in the NFL, I don't know how much we could be swayed one way or another. I mean, we've watched these teams play so many games that I kind of feel like we're kind of set on what we think. There's a few teams in there certainly that we're still trying to figure things out about, but I'll speak, covering the Denver Broncos. I don't feel like even beating Green Bay wildly changes anyone's perception. I'm getting the sense from you that the same thing can be applied to the Packers, that if at this point you either believe they can contend for a Super Bowl or you don't, right?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The only way that maybe it would change the perception here in Green Bay is, let's say they went into Denver and got blown out or something along those lines. But if it turns out to be a close game, which I would anticipate it to be, Green Bay plays nothing but close games here in Green Bay, and Denver is the master of close games, right? So I would expect this to be a close game. And so unless it really goes sideways for Green Bay, I can't speak for Denver, but unless it really goes sideways for the Packers, I don't think anybody's opinion changes that much. I think opinions would be changed more by the division games that the Packers have left. Again, as I mentioned, they play Chicago next week, and then when they wrap up the regular season against Minnesota.
Rookie from 107.5 and 1400, The Fan in Green Bay, my guest. Has Micah Parsons been everything the Packers hoped and dreamed he would be?
Everything and more. Unbelievable. It's so interesting. I know we probably all got to watch a lot of him play when he was with the Cowboys because the Cowboys are America's team, and they always wind up on primetime one way or another. But it's a whole different ballgame when you see him up close and personal and you see him on a day in and day out basis. I mean, he's 13 games into his Packers career and it's been worth the 2 first-round picks that they've given up. It's worth Kenny Clark, who, by the way, I did a radio show with Kenny for 6 years, so it holds a dear spot in my heart. It's worth the new contract, everything. It's everything. I will say this, though, Ryan. I am interested to see what 2026 looks like with Micah because I think some of what we're seeing this season is fueled by his disrespect or whatever you want to call it, what happened in Dallas, right? So I think there's a little bit, I'm out to show everybody that the Cowboys were wrong and that they should have, worked out a deal with me. And so there's a little bit of that going on, I think. So I'm very curious to see what 2026 looks like. But of course, he's 12 and a half sacks, just like he's had in his, every year. And he's got 4 games to go. So yeah, so far it's been worth every penny and everything that they gave up to get him.
What does the Packers defense respect about, and somebody there has an opinion apparently on the Packers who wants to chime in. What does the Packers defense respect about Bo Nix and the Broncos offense?
I think what they respect about Bo the most is just his toughness and what he's done in his first couple of years there in Denver. I know that they think that they can force some turnovers. I think they feel confident in their secondary, but I think that most of all they just respected his grittiness. He just looks like one of those tough characters that will do anything to win. It looks like he's made out of a different mold, and I just think they respect his character in general.
Has Jordan Love added something to his game this year?
Well, he's better downfield. I think he leads the league in accuracy in downfield throws. I still see some, I don't know how to phrase it, lack of consistency or lack of accuracy downfield. I think some of the reason why the percentages of his completion so downfield is so high is because he's got some pretty good receivers that go get the football. Christian Watson is one of them, and I've seen a change in the offense a couple of games since he's been back. It's just got this bigger swagger. It's got a little bit more confidence. They're opening up the offense a little bit more. I think Jordan Love has made strides forward, but at sometimes they still think he lacks that consistency. But, here's the problem in Green Bay. Unless he's Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, he is going to be under the microscope. I mean, if you want to step back and if we were all honest and look at what he's done in his first few years as the starter, he's been really, really good. But that doesn't fly in Green Bay sometimes when you've had Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. And he's handled that extremely well. He hasn't gotten sour or salty with some of the criticism that he's taken. Some of it fair, unfair, and probably unfair because I'm still kind of in this holding pattern on him in general. But it's probably unfair because of what's happened over the last 30 plus years at quarterback here in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Well, we out here, and as you well know, we can empathize with the high standards at the quarterback position. Certainly, Josh Jacobs. Your gut tells you he will or will not play on Sunday?
My gut says he'll give it a shot. I would imagine that they will play him, and it wouldn't be the heavy workload like he typically gets. I would imagine if that's the case, we'll see more Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks A couple of weeks ago when he had this and I was in the locker room and he had missed a game and then he got the clearance to play, I asked him, I mean, if they give you the green light to play, is this going to be your typical workload or is this going to be more of a rotation? And he said more of a rotation. And so that is what I would expect on Sunday if he does play. There's a lot of chat. There is some chatter about, not amongst the locker room or the coaches, but amongst the fans and the media that, if there's a game that you want to rest them in this game because it's a cross-conference game and you have bigger things ahead with the Bears in a week, as I mentioned. But I don't think that's how they operate. I don't think that's how the league operates, right? If you've got the green light, you go, and it may not be your full workload, but you get out there and you help your team.
So how much does that change things in your mind? Let's take it at Josh Jacobs available, but not at the level he's normally available. How much does that change things for the Packers?
I don't think it changes that much, to be honest with you, because they're confident in Emmanuel Wilson. And when he filled in when Josh was out, he had the first 100-yard rushing game of the season for the Packers, scored a couple of touchdowns. So I think they're very confident in their running back situation minus Josh anyways. Now, nobody's going to confuse these other guys for Jacobs, but I don't think it changes one iota, to be honest with you.
Well, the X factor, if you will, for Sunday, what do you think this one ultimately comes down to, being that both of these teams love to live dangerously with all these close games? What do you think ultimately separates them?
Well, the cliche is, right, whoever executes and whoever doesn't turn the football over. But specifically for the Packers, it all depends on how the offensive line performs and how they protect Jordan Love. We all know about Nick Bonito, and we all know about Jonathan Cooper as, his Robin is the Batman. And we know how they lead the league in sacks with 55. Excuse me. It's going to come down, quite frankly, to the Packers offensive line, which has had issues at times this year. They're starting to settle in a little bit more. They've actually found a little bit more consistency with Sean Ryan at center than Elton Jenkins, who was a guard, and they moved to center at the beginning of the year. So the offensive line has settled down a little bit, but it's still not operating at the efficiency that they needed to. And I think it's all going to come down to protecting Jordan Love, because they have started to open it up over the past couple of games since Christian Watson has been back. And that's really been kind of the focus in the locker room, the protection of Jordan, the route running by the Packers receivers. And if things get sped up, what happens, because there's a pass rush that's getting after Jordan. So that's really kind of been the conversation in the locker room this week.
Well, perhaps the first of two meetings this year between the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers win. Then it would really be like 1997. Rookie, really appreciate the time and your insight. Hope all is well up there in Green Bay, and let's chat again soon.
Let's do that, Ryan. And once again, I apologize about yesterday, but thanks for making room for me today. Shout out to Arvada West Wildcats. Go Cats. And happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays to you and yours as well, Rookie. Really appreciate it. That is Rookie from Sports Radio 107.5 and 1400 The Fan up in Green Bay. A lot of really good insight there. The big news, if you had not heard, Matt LaFleur a little bit coy on the status of Josh Jacobs for Sunday's game. You know the history with Josh Jacobs when he was in a different uniform going against the Denver Broncos. I think whatever your perception or confidence level in this game is, not seeing as much of Josh Jacobs, given what he used to do to the Broncos as a Raider, may make you feel just that much better about the Broncos' chances on Sunday. Plenty more to come on Sunday's game. You will hear from Sean Payton, his final thoughts before Sunday. We'll have more Drive Time Sports right after this on Extra Sports 1300. With 51% of the vote, Dylan Orocho from Harrison High School is our athlete of the week. It was a close vote between the two hoopers we had up for the vote this week. Sammy Nichols, shouts to those of you supporting Peyton basketball because I have an affinity for the smaller schools, going to one myself, and to see really an entire town rally around Sammy was really good to see. But Harrison in that school district, man, they turned out in a big way to support Dylan. And look, you can't go wrong. That's the thing every week with these athlete of the weeks. You can't go wrong with any of them. We have so many high-level athletes at the high school level in Southern Colorado. So every week, I mean, you could go any direction with your vote, and it would not be wrong. But this week, 51% of the vote went to Dylan Orocho. So thanks to everyone who voted. Congrats to Dylan. And we're working to put some together to get Dylan on the show. So, that's the other thing about these prep athletes. They do a lot. They got a lot going on. Whether it's academics or other clubs or teams. So we're working through. We'll get Dylan on the show. But for now, just congratulations to Dylan Orocho of Harrison. He is our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Make sure you go to extrasports1300.com and submit your nominations for next week. And on Monday, we'll have 4 new deserving nominees for you to choose from. Start the show by talking about the Avalanche. And again, the symbolism was just right in front of my face. The 96 team in the building playing the Florida Panthers, who had won the last 2 Stanley Cups, and the Avs, just as they do to pretty much everybody, destroyed them. And with Florida, I mean, here's where both sides of that game matter. Usually we focus on just the Avalanche side of things, but the Florida Panthers of the last 2 years don't lose to the Avs 6-2. They just don't. But that's part of it. That it really seems like this team that has had a stranglehold on the NHL for the last couple years, they just can't do it. Not without Tkachuk, who they're going to get back here in the next couple of weeks. We'll see how he plays. But the big one is Alexander Barkov. And there are rumors that he's going to be back before the end of the year, but what's he going to be like? And where's Florida going to be at that point? It's not a playoff team right now. But that adds to it. To say it's open. And there was a move made today by a team that may be trying to seize the opportunity as the Edmonton Oilers finally parted ways with Stuart Skinner. They got off of that roller coaster ride and decided to get in line for another roller coaster in Tristan Jarry. The Penguins and the Oilers doing a bit of business today, basically swapping goaltenders. Look, with Tristan Jarry, I don't know that your hopes, if you're an Oilers fan, can be sky high for this guy, but the bottom line is you just had to be done with Stuart Skinner. Just had to be. I mean, this is just change the scenery, right, for all parties involved. The numbers and the way that Tristan Jarry has played for Pittsburgh, you would not put him and automatically say the Oilers' goaltending woes are fixed. You can't say that. But the progress, the necessity of this, you had to move on from Stuart Skinner. You just had to get a different guy in between the pipes and take your chances. So this is probably a long overdue move, and I get it. It's hard when you have a team that has been to the last two Stanley Cup finals to make a significant move, because trading Stuart Skinner is a big move. I get it. It's hard to do that. But the Oilers weren't where they've been the last 2 years because of Stuart Skinner. He's had his moments, but overall, he's not the reason why they're there the last 2 years. They had to do something. And who knows, we talk about guys that just need to change the scenery. Maybe Pittsburgh can get the best out of Stuart Skinner and vice versa with Tristan Jarry and the Edmonton Oilers. But I think this is a move first and foremost because there just came a point where they had to be done with Stuart Skinner. That's the biggest part of this. But also, Florida is where they are at right now. It looks open, and right now Edmonton can say to themselves, that's the only team that can beat us. And they're near the bottom. They're what, 2 or 3 points out from the cellar in the Atlantic? I mean, you want to talk about the opportunity being there across the NHL. Edmonton's got to feel that more than anybody else because they've ran their head up against a wall twice in the Stanley Cup final against that team. So the opportunity being there to not have to go up against Florida necessitated this move. But I also think if you're Edmonton, you're looking at Dallas and Colorado and going, we got to do something. We're not in the league of those two teams right now. And what's keeping us from that? What keeps Edmonton from anything that they want in life? Goaltending. So it's never one reason why a team makes a move. I think there are 3 big reasons why Edmonton made the move today, and we'll see if it works out. On the Avs, or just Colorado sports in general, Aaron texted in at 719-247-1313. How crazy is it that if you were to power rank the 3 Colorado teams, the Broncos would be last? Such a fun time to be a fan of the Avs, Nugs, and Broncos. Soak it up while we can. Yeah, there's a Boston Light feel to what's going on right now in Colorado sports. And I think certainly more individual accolades have gone the way of Colorado athletes recently, but Boston had the Patriots first and foremost, but they also had the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Celtics. So it's not that, but it may be the closest thing that anyone has had in recent years to what Boston went through when they were winning NBA titles, Super Bowls, going to Stanley Cup final. But it's like that line from The Office, that Andy Bernard, who is my least favorite Office character. My boys and I had a big time discussion about this the other night. There is no character on The Office worse than Andy Bernard. Drives me absolutely up the wall, that guy. But has that pretty good line towards the end. I think it was actually in the series finale, where it said, I wish there were a way that you knew you were in the good old days before they were gone. For Colorado sports, we're in the good old days. And that's what we try to do on this show is maximize it and spend as much time in these days as we can, because it's pretty good right now. Pretty good right now. I'll just say on the who would have thought the Broncos rank last. I mean, kind of part of the conversation I think that we have about the Denver Broncos is based on the Nuggets and the Avalanche. Here's what I mean by that. If you follow all three of those teams, you know what a dominant team, an elite team looks like. A championship contender, you know what it looks like. The Avalanche and the Nuggets have won titles. And you see what those teams are doing. And look, there's more than one way to achieve success and ultimate success, but the Broncos are do it in a much different way than the Nuggets and the Avalanche. The Nuggets and Avalanche, when they won their championships, they were dominant. And this year, they've looked dominant. The Broncos don't look dominating week in and week out. Again, it doesn't mean they can't win a championship, but I think it feeds into some of the doubt that surrounding this team is even Colorado sports fans, I think, are comparing the Broncos and what they're doing to the Avs and the Nuggets, saying this doesn't look the same. It's not as convincing. And I don't think that's wrong to do at all. And again, none of this disqualifies the Denver Broncos, but you know what a dominant team looks like. You know what a championship team looks like. And there are many times this season that even though the Broncos have a record that would say they've been dominant, they don't look dominant. Perhaps Sunday will change some hearts and minds here. But I agree with Rookie. Rookie joined me last segment, and he basically, echoed the same sentiments I had yesterday. I just don't. This is a high-profile matchup. Certainly, this is a showcase game in many ways, but he talked about from the Packers' perspective, like they got the Bears coming up. Like the Broncos is not the more important game to them. And you could argue from the Broncos' perspective next week against Jacksonville, even though Jacksonville right now doesn't feel like a threat to Denver in the top overall seed, that has more consequence to it. So that's what I'm having. Like, it's not that I'm not intrigued by this game. I am. I absolutely am. But how big this game is, how consequential this game is, I don't feel it. Because I think both teams have games that are more consequential to them immediately after this one. But that's why we have a term like showcase game. Showcase. Let's see a couple of the teams near the top of the standings. Let's see them head to head. Talk more about the Broncos coming up. This before we leave this topic of the Oilers trading for Tristan Jarry. I like this from Tom, and it actually feeds into a conversation I want to have a little bit later. It says Phillip Rivers is coming back. Why don't the Oilers bring back Grant Fuhr? My guy I used to do the Air Force games with on altitude, Nick Gismondi, best buds with Grant Fuhr. And I know, talking to him, Grant Fuhr could get out there. He could make a couple of saves if called upon. But to Tom's point with Phillip Rivers, I mean, is Pandora's box a little bit open in terms of the old heads? There's another player, or an athlete, I should say, that accomplished something today that's just adding to this. Talk about that coming up in a little bit. But again, coming up in the more immediate future, you'll hear from Sean Payton, his final thoughts before Sunday's game against the Packers. Welcome in, hour 2 on this Friday. Appreciate you tuning in. And hello to those of you who are watching the show on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, I mean, you're already doing me a huge favor by watching the show, but if you don't mind, if I'm not being too needy, like, subscribe, follow. And how about I reciprocate by if you drop a comment while you're there, I'll read it on the air and you can interact that way. Of course, you can get through to the program by more traditional means by calling or texting into the show at 719-247-1313. Broncos and Packers coming up on Sunday. The consequence of this game, again, I don't know is there. Given one team is in the AFC, one's in the NFC, and both teams have a lot more to take care of on their side of the bracket, so to speak. But it's a fun matchup. It's a bit of a showcase game. It's almost like in college football, we get these early in the season. Right? Notre Dame, Miami, although that became very consequential in the end, did it not? But Oregon and Ohio State last year, you know, that's when college football has their showcase games. Here in the NFL, they happen at random times. But this one's happening late in the season. So it's a fun matchup. Let's first get the unpleasantness out of the way, which is the injury report. Ben Powers not back. They did open up his 21-day window, but he will not play on Sunday. And Mike McGlinchey, this one popped up today. He's questionable for the game. Now, the Broncos have certainly made do with what they have without Ben Powers, but you're pushing it a little bit if Mike McGlinchey can't go. Because McGlinchey and Powers, for being honest about it, both of them very much embody the identity of the Denver Broncos, which is running the football. Running the football, controlling the clock, winning close games. So we'll wait and see if McGlinchey ends up playing. Pat Bryant is the other injury of note. Sean Payton said today if it were a playoff game, Pat Bryant would play. But, and I think it just speaks to the mindset, right? Some people could bill this game as a Super Bowl preview if they want. I think the fact that the Broncos are erring on the side of caution with both Ben Powers and Pat Bryant and maybe on Mike McGlinchey, that shows you that the Broncos, they want to win this game. Both teams want to win this game. But is this one of those that you pull out all the stops and you don't err on the side of caution because you really need this one? This isn't one of those games. So we'll see if McGlinchey ends up playing. Bryant and Powers have already been ruled out. Now, a couple of things to that end. The identity of the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton was asked an interesting question today, and I think you will at times have felt this way. Doesn't it look different than it did in New Orleans with Sean Payton? Because when you think of New Orleans, you think of explosive offense, big point totals, downfield passing game. That's what you think of when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, and that's not what you think of when it comes to the Denver Broncos. So Sean Payton was asked whether perhaps he's evolved in terms of what he thinks wins in today's NFL. I thought the answer was very interesting from Sean Payton. Here he is on setting the record straight a little bit on the differences between his Saints teams and his Broncos teams.
There were a number of games that we played like, we're playing now at times. So I think you really have to dive into those numbers. And we were further along probably, with a veteran quarterback. But most importantly, it's, utilizing the skill sets we have here, and then also understanding how the game's unfolding.
Couple interesting things there. Because I'm sure if you went back through the New Orleans game log when Sean Payton was there, you will find that they were able to win some very tight games. I would imagine a lot of the Falcons games come to mind when Matt Ryan was in Atlanta. But those even were high-scoring close games. The Broncos, by and large, are playing close games that are low-scoring. But therein lies the KYP that Sean Payton mentioned. He talked about skill sets. I'm saying knowing your personnel. And Alvin Kamara does not exist on the Denver Broncos. I would not say that Courtland Sutton is a better receiver than Michael Thomas when he was really at the top of his game. The group of skill players, by and large, is just not as talented as Sean Payton had in New Orleans. Most notably at the quarterback position. Right? That's probably the biggest difference between those two teams. And in the interest of fairness, what Sean Payton said was where we were further along in New Orleans because Drew Brees was our quarterback as opposed to Bo Nix in year 2. Not everything that isn't glowing about Bo Nix has to be viewed as a negative. Drew Brees had more games under his belt. He was a more of a veteran quarterback. Now, I could take it to the next level and say that Drew Brees, even when he was in San Diego, I think was a more talented quarterback than Bo Nix. But Drew Brees is going to get in the Hall of Fame. Right? So it's not an insult to say that Bo Nix isn't better than Drew Brees. But I just don't think the collection of talent at those positions is as great as Sean Payton had in New Orleans. Now, there are some of these guys that could be as time goes on. Right? There are young players, most notably right now, R.J. Harvey. While Bo Nix is not young in terms of his high-level football experience because the number of games he played in college, he is young in terms of his NFL experience. R.J. Harvey is your typical rookie. Like, he's young, and he has room to get better. Here's Sean Payton talking about R.J. Harvey taking on this bigger role that he has the last couple of games.
He's a young player who's now all of a sudden went from part of a role to now a little bit more of a role. And again, when we saw him in college, we thought his running skill set was something. And sure, there's a few different schemes now maybe than he had in college, and yet he's got good vision, contact balance. It's hard to get him to talk. He's quiet, but he's quietly smart.
And this is another game, if you want the most consequence that can come from this, I think it's based around R.J. Harvey. You saw him pop a little bit against the Raiders. Now you see it now you need to see it against a much better defense in Green Bay. In fact, down the stretch, I believe 3 of the top 10 rush defenses in the NFL are on the Broncos schedule, including Green Bay and Jacksonville next week. So beyond the win and extending the winning streak, I think the most important thing for the Denver Broncos is continuing the progression of R.J. Harvey. But if Ben Powers is a no and Mike McGlinchey is a maybe no, can they still continue the progression of R.J. Harvey without 2 offensive linemen? One hasn't really affected them too much. 2 might. So that's certainly something to watch coming up on Sunday. As I look at this game, I think ultimately this game will be decided on who makes more explosive plays. Jordan Love, over the last few games, has been able to hit a lot of deep balls. And Bo Nix's inability to do that has been brought up on a number of occasions this season. And an explosive play doesn't necessarily have to be a 30-yard throw down the field. It could be R.J. Harvey getting a big run. It could be, I talked about Marvin Mims earlier this week and the necessity to get him more involved if this Broncos offense is going to ratchet up a level. Could it be him on an end around for an explosive play? So it's not just the downfield throwing, but the Packers have got that in their bag, so to speak. And Rookie from 107.5 The Fan in Green Bay last hour talked about the receiving core of the Green Bay Packers being a bunch of guys that can go up and get those passes. When we've talked about Bo Nix's inability to complete passes down the field, yeah, a large part of that is his accuracy or lack thereof. But we have seen it numerous times. The receivers downfield, Troy Franklin is the one that immediately comes to mind, not being able to catch a really good thrown ball by Bo Nix. And Jordan Love has better accuracy downfield, I think, than Bo Nix, but he also has a group of wide receivers who that's their game. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, these wide receivers are built for the deep passing game. I don't know that many of the Broncos receivers are built for it or certainly have shown the ability to do what Watson and Doubs have done. So I think there's an easier way to foresee the Green Bay Packers being able to hit explosive plays and the Denver Broncos not. But here's the great equalizer, because it has been every game that the Broncos have gone up against a more dynamic offense than their own, which Sunday would qualify. Benito and Cooper and Allen. The pass rush of the Denver Broncos. That's the equalizer. Yeah, the Packers have explosive play ability. And one name that should come to your mind that should send shivers down your spine when I say that is Riley Moss. This does not appear to be a good matchup for Riley Moss. And I would guarantee you that that is the first guy, and it's obvious, right? I mean, you know that Riley Moss is the obvious first guy that teams look at, but the Packers have the ability to really put him through hell for 4 quarters, like we have seen from Riley Moss on numerous occasions. But the Packers offensive line, not as good as the Broncos offensive line. There will be the chances for the Broncos pass rush to get to Jordan Love to keep him from completing the deep passes. If he has time, I think they're going to eat up the Broncos secondary, Riley Moss in particular. But if Jordan Love doesn't have the time, and he's good, he has mobility, he can buy time. It's not going to be easy, even if Benito and Cooper win their one-on-ones. They're still going to have to corral Jordan Love. But if they can do that, then that will keep the Packers from being able to get those explosive plays. But I think the team that has more explosive plays is going to win the game. And the number could be 2-1. Right? I think that's what the Broncos would like. They limit all of Green Bay's ability to get explosives, and they get one or two at the exact right time. I think they take that, and I think it's possible. But the team that is able to hit more of those explosive plays, I think, is going to win on Sunday. As far as a prediction goes, I mean, if you're betting, the value is on Denver. How could you not? A team on a 11-game winning streak, unbeaten at home, underdogs at home, the value is on Denver. But in terms of just picking this game, I think the Packers will win this game. I do. I think they'll be the team that is able to get more explosive plays. And I feel like the winning streak that the Broncos are on, it's going to end at some point. I don't see this team finishing out the regular season having not lost a game since 3 months ago. I think it's going to end at some point. And I would say with Jacksonville being an AFC opponent, with how big the Chiefs game is on Christmas, maybe not from a playoff perspective, because I fully expect the Chiefs to be eliminated from postseason contention, but that's a building that the Broncos have not won in a very long time against Mahomes. So I think they really want to win that game, even if they don't need it to win a division. And I think home field advantage will depend on the Broncos beating the Chargers week 18. So I just look at the next 3 games. It's the quality of the Green Bay Packers, but it's also the next 3 games. I feel like those are games that the Broncos are going to be even more locked in for. So this would be the game where if there's any slipping from the Denver Broncos, this would be the game. And the Packers are a good enough team to exploit that. So prediction-wise, I'm going with the Packers, but I don't begrudge anyone to put a few bucks down on the Broncos. Being home underdogs, the value is with them 100%. Take your thoughts and predictions for Sunday, 719-247-1313. Getting ready for week 15 in the National Football League. Got a pretty good one last night as the Atlanta Falcons rallied from 14 points down to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The most unfortunate thing about last night is that the Buccaneers are now 1-6 in their creamsicle unis. And it's unfortunate because there are 3 teams in the NFL that I submit should permanently go back to their throwbacks. And they are the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But even if the NFL allows them to do that, why would they? They hardly ever win. I think their last win was the first time they wore them. The first game they brought them back, I think they won. I don't think they've won since. So any chances of the creamsicle unis being and look, the Buccaneers have great uniforms. I'm just speaking to how awesome the creamsicles are. There's no chance that they'll bring him back with the record that they have. And last night was a collapse reminiscent of the team that wore those uniforms on a regular basis. And while he looked really good doing this at the post-game podium, wearing his creamsicle gear, Todd Bowles was not happy.
It's inexcusable. You don't make excuses. You gotta care enough where the hurts. You gotta care enough where the hurts. It gotta mean something to you. It's more than a job. It's your livelihood. How well do you know your job? How well can you do your job? Well, you can't sugarcoat. It was inexcusable, and there's no answer for it. There's no excuse for it. That's what you tell them in the locker room. Look in the mirror.
First of all, my favorite thing about that was whenever you throw in the curse word in the middle of a word, that's the best. When it's, I don't know if I can say it without saying the word, unacceptable. It's very hard to do it if you're censoring yourself. Bleep inexcusable, I believe was what he said. Throwing the curse word in the middle of another word is the best way to do it. It's my favorite kind of cursing. But you know that person in your life. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a friend of yours, maybe it's your boss, who knows? There are people who simply do not curse. So when they do, you notice. You know, in today's day and age, you know, if and I guess because I'm governed by the FCC, maybe it's jarring if you and I were to hang out and I really used my off-the-air language. I'm not unbelievably profane, but I'm certainly more profane than I am when the FCC is listening. That might be a little bit jarring, but I'm talking about in real life, people that could say whatever they want, but never curse. And you hear them curse, and it's like, it is jarring. That's Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles doesn't curse, and even the way he cursed was in the way you would expect Todd Bowles, if you ever heard him curse, to curse. Because he didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. He didn't exclaim. It was very much his normal tone and dictation. His diction, I should say, not his dictation. His diction. But yet, it's a curse word every other word. When I watched him after that game, I was... And I'm not one that gets upset when people curse. Doesn't bother me. I gasped audibly on my couch that Todd Bowles is using that kind of language. It's like when Captain America cursed in Age of Ultron, you're like, what is this? This is not, that word's not supposed to be coming out of that person's mouth. But what that was Todd Bowles' last stand as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There is only one of two ways that this is going to go. There is no third option. The Buccaneers are either going to listen to what Todd Bowles said, have the reaction that I did, and they are going to get right, and they are going to reclaim their place as a Super Bowl contender. We are about to see the best of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or this loss and that tirade will turn out to be a sign of a collapse by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they may miss the playoffs entirely. They may still get in, because I said at the beginning of the season, Carolina is going to be better than people think, but I didn't have them winning the NFC South. So, but that could still manifest itself of Tampa Bay gets in as the tallest toddler, so to speak, and then get absolutely destroyed in the first round of the playoffs. That's the way that can manifest itself, even with Tampa getting into the postseason. But there's no third road here. Either this tirade is going to go down in history as on the same level down in Florida as that famous Tim Tebow speech, and this will galvanize the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they will ride this all the way to the NFC Championship game, or this is going to be the clip that is played on SportsCenter over and over when the Buccaneers announce that Todd Bowles has been fired. This is Todd Bowles either at the end of his rope and having no more answers, or this is Todd Bowles going, I got to do something. And the great coaches do that, right? The great coaches have the ability to call out their team and bring out the best in them. So either this is going to fall on deaf ears, and this will be the last thing we hear from Todd Bowles before he is fired, or this will be the stroke of genius, the button push that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need to be what I thought they could be this season, which is a dark horse to go to the Super Bowl. And I thought Tampa going into the year, I picked Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. But if for some reason I couldn't pick Green Bay, I was going to take Tampa. So you can add the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you can add the NFC South as one of the non-Broncos things that you watch down the stretch, because we have a race in the NFC South and only one team is getting in. And the NFL schedule makers, this is why they don't beat the allegations that it's scripted. Tampa and Carolina play twice in the last 4 weeks of the season, 3 weeks of the season. Now, if I'm doing my math right, they play twice. They haven't faced each other at all. Think about that. Yeah, they line up a lot of divisional opponents at the end, but twice? We're in week 15 and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Carolina Panthers have not met yet, and they just so happen to now be battling for the division title? There's your daily conspiracy theory about the NFL being scripted. Tampa and Carolina play for the division twice in the last month of the season. I think as bad as that loss was last night, and it was a bad loss, and it's a bad loss at the end of a string of a lot of bad losses, I'm going to be optimistic. I think this is going to be the thing to galvanize the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I do. I think this is going to be the thing that gets them to snap out of whatever this is that they are currently in, this mental fog. And I think you're going to see the best of Tampa Bay. I don't know how, and Todd Bowles is a very well-respected coach. Right? He's not Josh McDaniels or something. The respect that the Tampa players have for Todd Bowles tells me they'll hear this and go, we got to get right. And what also helps me get to the conclusion I have gotten to, last night was the first time in a very long time that Tampa has had Tristan Wirfs and Mike Evans. They haven't had those two guys, and I think the absence of those two is absolutely part of the reason. Not that it excuses Tampa Bay, and it certainly doesn't excuse them last night because they had both of them. I'm not saying that it's okay for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lose the games they've been losing because they don't have Mike Evans and Tristan Wirfs. There is a lot of this on Baker Mayfield, who has turned from an MVP candidate into what the Browns looked at and said, this isn't good enough. But also with that, if you want to call it a tirade, he's so soft-spoken, I don't even know if you can consider it a tirade. But whatever that was from Todd Bowles, plus getting back Tristan Wirfs and Mike Evans, I think you are going to see at least the Bucs get back to what they were at the beginning of the season, if not an even higher level. But option B is that will be a desperate move by a desperate coach who will find himself in the unemployment line when this season is over. There is no middle ground here. And I think Todd Bowles knew that when he stepped to the podium and said, I am going to, because he knew he was getting that question. I don't want to say it's fake or scripted, but you have a message if you're a head coach that you want to get across at the end of a game, good, bad, or indifferent. You have a message you want to send. Todd Bowles had that loaded up. I think he's trying to save the Bucs season with that. NX bleeping excusable. The loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night against Kirk Cousins, no less. 719-247-1313. Back after this. We are coming up on the end of the calendar year, and at this time of year, we start to kind of look back and think of the biggest sports stories of the year, and I don't know that where it will be on the list, but it is worth mentioning the story of the amount of athletes that would be characterized as decrepit by professional sports standards that are still doing it at a high level. The unks, as the kids would say. Of course, when you think of this, you automatically think of LeBron James, who last year at the age of 40 became the oldest player in NBA history to average 20 or more points a game, earn all NBA honors, and score at least 40 in a game. We had the actual Unk Bowl, or the Icy Hot Bowl, if you want to be meaner about it. Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, which turned into an instant classic with the Bengals winning 33-31. We thought that Joe Flacco was going to save the Cincinnati Bengals with that win. Aaron Rodgers may get the last laugh because he, at his, what they would call advanced age, is holding down a playoff spot in what was supposed to be one of the NFL's best divisions. Here locally, Brent Burns, at 40 years old, incredibly productive for the Colorado Avalanche. He has 14 points. His streak of now over 950 straight games played is continuing, and he's chasing Phil Kessel at 1,064. And he just might get it. You do the math, if Brent Burns hangs around, he might get that. And then, of course, one of the bigger stories of the week has been Phillip Rivers, who at 44 years old looks to be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. Let's add another one to the mix. And this story is going to continue into the calendar year of 2026. Today, 41-year-old Lindsey Vonn won the World Cup downhill at the age of 41. I don't know if unk is the proper term for Lindsay, but her renaissance after the age of 40 will carry into February and be the story of the Winter Olympics in Italy. Lindsey Vonn will be the biggest name, the biggest story. Now, you and I might be very excited about the U.S. hockey team playing Canada at some point. Great spot put out, by the way, by NBC. John Hamm, like Herb Brooks, going into the Team USA locker room and saying we have a chance to get the most important thing. And Jack Eichel chimes in, Canadian tears. And it goes from there. You should watch it. It's a good one. But we know the Olympics bring in a different audience. And the stuff that NBC puts in prime time is not necessarily the sports that are most popular outside of the Olympic cycle. Skiing would be one of those. We don't talk a lot of skiing day to day, but when the Olympics roll around, especially, well, only the winter ones, but during the Winter Olympics, skiing is one of the premier events. And there's Michaela Schifrin as well, but Lindsey Vonn's going to be the biggest story. She's going to be on NBC every single night, whether it's interviews, whether it's highlights. Lindsey Vonn will be the story. And she began the lead up to Cortino by not only winning the World Cup downhill at age 41, by downhill skiing standards, she obliterated the field. Vaughn, after her run, knowing how good it was, hit everyone with a Steph Curry sleepy night-night. I think it's just called night-night. I like to throw in sleepy night-night. Sounds cooler. If you're watching on social media, she hit them with one of these. She knew. But she obliterated the field. And she was quoted afterwards by saying she felt fast in the summer. Which, I like a legitimate question. What do you do if you're a competitive skier in the summer? Like, for someone that skis, that might be the dumbest question ever. I'll admit my ignorance on this. How does she know she's fast in the summer? Is it water skiing? Does she water ski? Now I'm just going to sound dumber, so I'll go ahead and stop doing that. But she said that she felt fast in the summer, and now, what was the quote? Quote, I guess I now know how fast I am. Lindsey Vonn is back with titanium alloy in her joints at the age of 41. And how's this for a coincidence with the biggest story this week in the NFL? She also has been retired for 5 years. We had Dara Torres in swimming years ago. You remember at 41 years old, she won 3 silvers. I think Lindsey Vonn's going to get gold. And 40-plus-year-old athletes is not a new phenomenon. Right? The one that immediately comes to mind, Satchel Paige. Not that I was around to see him, but when I think of athletes competing until an advanced age, I think of Satchel Paige. But there have been athletes every generation. But doesn't it feel more prevalent right now? Doesn't it feel like it's more of a story right now? I think it does, and I have a theory as to why. In our sports culture, we are very quick to anoint. Right? Just in general. Sometimes we anoint and we turn out to be correct. Sometimes not so much. But we are very quick to find the next phenom and dote on him or her and say they're the greatest thing that has ever happened to the sport. We do that. It's just our human psychology. We want what's new. We want what's different. And especially in the sports world, we love to go over the top and be hyperbolic with our opinions. Yours truly is not an exception to that rule. On occasion, I will say. I think that's part of the reason why, especially if you're into the NBA. NHL as well. I mean, look at what Macklin Celebrini is doing with San Jose. Look at what we said about Connor Bedard the moment he arrived in Chicago. But in the NBA, you have Wemby, you have Cooper Flagg now. And it's almost like those two things can't coexist. If Wemby is now knocking on the door of being the best player in the NBA, how could somebody at 40 years old possibly be able to compete in a league where that is the case and just do that for every sport? It's almost like Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Lindsey Vonn, LeBron James, Brent Burns, they can't even exist. They're almost double the age of these phenoms. But if you think about it, there's enough room for everyone. Right? And with sports science and the advance of medicine, It should be more prevalent that athletes are competing at a higher level for longer. It should make some sense that Lindsey Vonn, with titanium joints after a 5-year absence, can come back and win the World Cup downhill. It's remarkable, but I don't know if it should feel like it defies logic the way it does. But to me, the Phillip Rivers thing is going to push this even further. All signs point to him being the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. In that sport, which not only the physicality of the NFL, which everyone is seizing on, right? How's Phillip Rivers going to handle one of the Seahawks pass rushers hitting him, right? But the team nature of the sport, like Lindsey Vonn was only responsible for Lindsey Vonn. She had to get herself right. Phillip Rivers, not only are there the questions about Phillip Rivers, there's a bigger question about the entire Colts team. They had a 99% chance of making the playoffs like a month ago. They're spiraling. Phillip Rivers is not just being tasked with beating Father Time himself and being able to go out there and perform at the age of 44. He is tasked with lifting up an entire football team and saving their season. Right? Because there's something about these team athletes like LeBron. What have the Lakers won recently? As great as LeBron has been, or as age-defying as his accomplishments are, he's not lifting up the Lakers. Brent Burns, as productive as he's been, he's hardly at the top of the list of reasons why the Colorado Avalanche are where they are. So their individual stories are great, and they've been productive. But here we have Phillip Rivers with an opportunity to save the Colts season, to lift everyone up. Can his 44-year-old shoulders bear that weight? To say nothing of the physical toll that an NFL game could take on him. So maybe this has been the year of the Unks. And whatever you would call Lindsey Vonn, that story is going to continue into February. But so does this story about Phillip Rivers. And maybe these two stories push this even more about how athletes that maybe people would want to put in a retirement home are saying, no, I still have more to give. 719-247-1313. We'll hit the three stories that are driving the show next. Hello there, hour 3 on this Friday. Great to have you, whether you're listening on air, online, or through the Extra Sports app, or whether you're watching on any number of social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. The handle is the same at XTRA Sports 1300. This is an interactive experience, so if you would like to give your thoughts, you could do so either by dropping a comment on social media, or you can call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Perhaps you would have a thought or two on the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with the dismantling of the defending champions.
Stolen back by Nelson. Underneath, nice play from Manson. Slap pass towards the net. Deflection. Landeskog scores! Oh, Captain, my Captain! It's his 6th goal of the season. His first point in his last 5.
Connor McGahey on the call for Altitude Radio. The Avalanche with the 1996 Stanley Cup champion team in the building. Dismantle, as I said, the Florida Panthers, the very same team that the 96 Avs beat to win a Stanley Cup. It reminded me of Game 2 of that series, the way that the Avalanche got shot out of a cannon with a goal 1 minute and 14 seconds in, and just continued to bludgeon the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion. 6-2 was the final score. And the symbolism of last night was not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on you either. Yes, there was the 96 team in the building. But more importantly, the team on the ice with the Avalanche are the 2-time defending champions. And what you saw was a team that is a shell of their former selves. With no Tkachuk, no Bobrovsky, and especially no Alexander Barkov, the Florida Panthers are not nearly the team they have been the last 2 years. And unless they can get everyone healthy and back to their old selves, they are not going to put their hands on the greatest trophy in all of sports this year. There is no way the team that met the Avalanche last night is capable. I don't even know that they're a playoff team as currently constructed. But you wouldn't be either if you were missing guys that are as important to your team as Barkov, Tkachuk, and Bobrovsky. And then on the other side of the ice, you saw a team that makes a habit out of decimating their opponents. The Colorado Avalanche are continuing a historic pace in which they may end up becoming the 4th team in NHL history to lead both the NHL in goals for and goals against, meaning the most goals scored and the least goals given up, and they may surpass the Boston Bruins of a few years ago in terms of the number of points that they will accumulate throughout the season. This is, in hockey parlance, an absolute wagon. And right there, you see not only that the kings of the NHL are at the moment dead, but you also have a team that seems to be on a mission to take that trophy from them. And I always go back to this. The player that embodies all of this is Nathan McKinnon. And his role in last night's game, I think encapsulates perfectly what I'm talking about. Nathan McKinnon would have to deal with Alexander Barkov if he were healthy. The guy who has been able to, as well as anyone in the NHL has ever done, limit Leon Draisaitl and especially Connor McDavid. And without him, Nathan McKinnon had free reign to do whatever he wanted last night. There was no resistance. Countless free entries into the zone. A goal, assist. He becomes the first player in the NHL to surpass 50 points on the year. The way the Avalanche attacked Florida last night is the way that Nathan McKinnon attacks every single human being that has ever stood in front of him on skates. And you have right now two teams that seem destined to meet. And for that series between the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars to decide this year's Stanley Cup, we are there. There is no one else in the league that looks to be on the same level as Dallas and Colorado. They are running away with the West, and they are going to be the two teams battling for the President's Trophy. And I don't know how much of a battle it's going to be, with all due respect to Dallas, who has been unbelievable this season. I think the Avs are winning everything. I think they're smashing a ton of records. I think they're winning the President's Trophy, the Central Division. But we know that you can't dismiss Dallas. And the way they're playing, this is not just the bad matchup. Dallas is playing the second best hockey of anyone in the National Hockey League right now. But these two teams are head and shoulders above everyone else. And more than that, they're multiple body lengths above the reigning champions. Elsewhere in the Kroenke sports universe, here is story number 2. Cause on the call for Altitude Radio. The Nuggets cruise to a 136-105 win over the Sacramento Kings. Nikola Jokic, stop me if you've heard this one before, the best player on the court, led everyone in scoring last night with 36 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. And the Nuggets put up 136 points, and I don't think Jamal Murray even played that well. Still without Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. And they put up 136 points. The difference between the Nuggets and the Avalanche right now is the other side. And what I mean by that is both of these teams have proven themselves to be offensive juggernauts. You look at the highest scoring duo in the NBA, the highest scoring combination in the NBA. 2 out of the top 3 are Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. How is this possible? One duo is when Jamal passes it to Jokic, and the other is when Jokic passes it to Jamal. The Nuggets, because of injuries, have had to rotate some players. 3 of their lineups that they have put out there are among the 10 best that we have seen this year in the NBA in terms of efficiency. Which proves my long-held point. Anyone can look good next to Nikola Jokic, even Spencer Jones, Peyton Watson, and whoever else they might want to put on. Plus, you have the depth. Jonas Valanciunas was great last night, so was Tim Hardaway Jr. The Nuggets have the best offense in the NBA. But what they have not had, largely due to the two injuries I just mentioned, their defense has not been great. They need Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. What's separating them from being the NBA version of the Colorado Avalanche, which is actually the Oklahoma City Thunder? As much as it may pain Nuggets fans to come to that realization, the NBA version of the Avs is OKC. They are dominant on both ends of the floor. The Nuggets are only dominant on one end of the floor right now. Now, you can forgive that because they don't have Gordon and Christian Brown. But it's just the fact of the matter right now. Still, without those two, the Nuggets continue the best start in franchise history. They are an offensive juggernaut. The Avs are a juggernaut, period. Easy win for the Denver Nuggets last night. 11 straight road games. They've had a rough stretch of it at home lately, but 11 on the road, that's impressive. And then their story number 3.
We're going to be ready to go on our side, and I know they're going to come in with a really good plan. I know it's going to be a really good football game. And, it's pretty much going to be playoff football. And that's what you get to December, and end of the season, that's what you're playing for. We're extremely excited about it. Happy to be in this position here.
That is Broncos quarterback Bo Nix talking about Sunday's game against the Green Bay Packers. It won't have the consequence of a playoff game. Far from it, given this is a inter-conference opponent. But I think this will have the feel of a playoff game. And Sean Payne and Bo Nix have both pleaded with you, the fan, to treat it as such, with how vocal you are. This is what we call a showcase game. The loser of this game still has everything in front of them. The winner doesn't gain a whole heck of a lot. But it's an exciting game. It's a premier matchup. And most of the country is going to be watching this game. And these are two teams that have a knack for making every single game close. Whether that's to their credit or to their detriment, both the Packers and the Broncos, the similarities between these two teams are evident, and one of those is every game with these two teams. So I would expect nothing less of this. But ultimately, what separates these two teams is the ability to create explosive plays. And it's been the thing that I have mentioned in my apprehension about taking the Denver Broncos as a Super Bowl team at this point. I think in the postseason, that next year is necessary. You have to be able to create explosive plays. And we just haven't seen the Broncos do that a lot. Meanwhile, the Packers are coming in, and all they've hit is explosive plays over the past few weeks. Now, the Broncos' defense is going to have something to say about it, right? The pass rush of the Broncos can even that out. In terms of ability, Green Bay has more ability for explosive plays than the Broncos do. But the Broncos also have a defense that can keep the Packers from hitting explosive plays. But that pass rush is going to need to get to Jordan Love because he's going to be looking for 21. And did we find out the uniform combination yet? Are they wearing blue or orange? Whatever color the Broncos are wearing on Sunday, Jordan Love is going to be looking for number 21 down the field. This has the potential of being another nightmare Riley Moss game. I don't think either team is going to blow out the other. And you can't target Riley Moss on every play. But I think the Packers' ability, and especially with the wide receiving core they have, to get those explosive plays down the field, and the fact that the Broncos have a corner that has a tendency to give those kind of plays up, I think that ultimately separates these two teams. And why, from an X's and O's standpoint, I'm taking Green Bay. This at all, but my belief is the Denver Broncos are going to lose a game between now and the end of the season, at least one. If you're looking at these 4 games, if there is a game that you could foresee the Broncos losing, because maybe their mentality slipped a bit, and they meet up with a team that might be better than them. I think that there are all of these factors going into it. If the Broncos are going to lose a game between now and the end of the year, if you told me they're going to lose one game, it's this one. That's not something I can quantify. That's just a feeling I have. But in terms of what makes the difference, ultimately, I think for the Packers on Sunday, and they're going to be looking for the explosives more because Josh Jacobs is at least not going to have the workload he normally does, if he plays at all. And that's going to put even more on the Packers throwing the football. But I think they have the ability to hit enough explosive plays, beat the Broncos defense, and win this game on Sunday. 719-24-7. 13-13. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, the latest with now former Michigan head coach Sharon Moore. Just absolutely chilling details presented in court today. It's the most wonderful time of the year. We want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it for holiday shopping, travel, or to simply treat yourself. Enter this national contest at extrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list. Sponsored locally by Level Up Falcon, weight loss, hormone therapy, and IVs. Level up your health. Some levity brought forth by Brett. Some free levity we need before I get into the latest with Jerome Moore. Brett first sent me a picture of Yukon Cornelius from the Rudolph movie, saying he saw my doppelganger today. I have more hair at the top of my head and less hair on my face than Yukon Cornelius. There was a time where you could say that I've tried to keep the beard a little bit more trimmed up. And I look less like Yukon Cornelius than I did before. We keep the tradition alive. Then he adds, as the president of the Bo Nix fan club, do you think they should immediately put him in the Hall of Fame, even if he hasn't retired? I don't know who you're referring to. Me as the president of the Bo Nix fan club? I'm merely the treasurer of the Bo Nix fan club. I just keep an eye on the expenses. I don't know. One day, who knows? That is a good segue into this, though. Not the Jerome Moore, but Mike Bliss. And this goes back to a conversation we had a few days ago, where I claimed that Bo Nix, despite me not being on the board of directors of the Bo Nix fan club, that I could say that Bo Nix is the best that the Broncos have had at that position since Peyton Manning retired. And one of the names that was brought up pushing back against my claim, albeit I thought it was not that controversial. I mean, it's been not good, as you remember, after Peyton Manning. But somebody brought up Russell Wilson. And I think pointed out his first season under Sean Payton as why Russell Wilson is better than Bo Nix. And I didn't agree with that. I think you got to take the whole picture, also take into account the eyeball test, right? And you have to give credit. I'm not saying you attribute wins to Bo Nix, but he has been a part in contributing to wins in a way that no quarterback has done since Peyton Manning. And that has to count for something. Don't give him all the wins and put those on his resume. But he has contributed to winning more than any other quarterback the Broncos have had after Peyton Manning. But the Russell Wilson of it all is interesting. Mike Kliss put out a head-to-head comparison between Bo Nix and Russell Wilson, as they have now both played 30 games. I'll leave the record alone, but you know that it's been better with Bo Nix than Russell Wilson. Completion percentage, advantage Bo Nix. Passing yards, advantage Bo Nix. Touchdown, advantage Bo Nix. Quarterback rating, a stalemate. Bo Nix 90.2, Russell Wilson 90.9. Rushing attempts, advantage Bo Nix. Yards, advantage Bo Nix. Average, both at 4.6. Touchdowns, advantage Bo Nix. How about turnovers and sacks? Bo Nix has thrown more interceptions by 2. He has also fumbled the ball 6 fewer times than Russell Wilson did. Sacks, Bo Nix has taken fewer. by 60 fewer sacks than Russell Wilson took in his first 30 games as a Denver Bronco, which is a big reason why Russell Wilson is not the Broncos quarterback anymore. There is your most apples-to-apples comparison that you can have with Bo Nix and any one of Peyton Manning's whoever followed, I was going to say predecessor, that's before. Anybody that has followed Peyton Manning, this is the most apples-to-apples comparison. Bo Nix has contributed to more winning, and he has a higher completion percentage, more passing yards, more touchdowns, more rushing attempts, more rushing yards, more rushing touchdowns, fewer turnovers, and way fewer sacks. Bo Nix is better for the Denver Broncos than Russell Wilson. I think, courtesy of Mike Cliff, that case is closed. And that was my entire point, was to say we have moved because we move at light speed in our discourse. We have moved, and part of it is the Broncos being victims and Bo Nix being the victim of the Broncos' success. Now we're having Super Bowl conversations. We're having home field advantage, top overall seed, winning the division, all of this stuff. So now we move on to, well, is Bo Nix a quarterback that can win a championship? But we kind of glossed over because the Broncos have won so quickly with Bo Nix and won so much with Bo Nix that we kind of didn't have the few weeks to a year where we're talking about whether Bo Nix is better than his predecessor. And that was the point I made the other day, is that he is. It's not a great group of quarterbacks, and that's why I didn't think it was going to be that controversial. But my point was, we can take a moment or two along the way to recognize that the Broncos are better off at the most important position in football than they have been in years. And then after that brief pause, we can move on to talking about if Bo Nix is capable of winning the Broncos a Super Bowl. So tip of the cap to Mike Cook. You must be listening to the show. He's a friend of the program. He has listened to the show before. All right. No easy way to transition to this. But the wild half week that it's been with Sharon Moore didn't reach its conclusion, not by a long shot. But now the picture is becoming clear what exactly happened. Sharon Moore, the now former head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, appeared in court today. He was arraigned on assault charges. The prosecution, and I understand innocent until proven guilty, the prosecution's case today was that Sharon Moore, shortly after he was fired by the University of Michigan, went to the home of the young woman that is the victim in this, that he allegedly had the inappropriate relationship with that caused him to be fired. He went to her home, entered her home, and pulled out multiple knives, butter knives, if it matters, and scissors. And according to the prosecution, said that Sharon Moore threatened his own life and told her that he was going to kill himself and his blood would be on her hands. That essentially she ruined his life. So the charges, third-degree home invasion, which is a felony, that's going to be the big one. That if he's charged with, he's going to spend a lot of time in jail. Stalking and breaking and entering, or entering without breaking. He was released on $25,000 bond, and his next hearing is January 27th. I'm not saying that the young woman in all of this is blameless. All right? She is an adult. I understand that there is a power dynamic at play here. And she knew that Sharon Moore was married with 3 children. There was, at best, a lapse of judgment on her part. But that's where the blame on her ends. Because now we get into the power dynamic. Now we get into new details that say that we talked about this yesterday. You know, the wind, what changed with Michigan? There were rumors allegedly of this for a while. What changed to move Michigan in the direction of firing Sharon Moore? It was the woman coming to them and admitting that this is all happening and providing proof. So, Brett, your unwillingness to read the conspiracy theory, it looks like you may be proven right in all of this. Now, did Michigan look hard enough? Did they? There are going to be lingering questions, certainly. But it seems like the what changed, given that many involved in college football in the University of Michigan say this is not a new rumor that was going around. What changed? The woman came forward. Why? In large part, Sharon Moore fired. And that's not what the prosecution brought up today. That's just more reporting that has gone on today as far as how this all came to be. But the idea that Sharon Moore would blame this young woman for ruining his life. But she has a part in this. She is not blameless. But come on. She ruined your life? No, dude. You ruined your own life. You ruined your own life. And to break into somebody's home and threaten to do what Sharon Moore threatened to do as a way to punish this woman. My blood is on your hands. Like, no, this is ultimate. It's some personal responsibility. Right? Sharon Moore ruined his own life. And he took his firing the worst way he could have. And put this young woman in an incredibly scary and dangerous situation. So again, Sharon Moore will be back in court on January 22nd. The third-degree home invasion is going to be the big charge that I believe the prosecution is going to want to at least get that one. The other 2 are misdemeanors. So the story's not ending. And then we have the Michigan side of this, flushing out whether they did everything they could to find this all out. Or were they trying to keep their heads in the sand? Or when they hit the first wall in their own investigation, they went, okay, we're done. Nothing to see here. There's going to be some questions about that. And then there's the sports side, which is less important than these others. But the football side of where Michigan goes from here for their football player. 719 24/7 1330. That's that. A blockbuster trade has just gone down in the National Hockey League. Quinn Hughes, regarded as by many as the best defenseman not named Cale Makar, is going to the same division that Cale Makar plays in. Quinn Hughes has been traded by the Canucks to the Minnesota Wild. 3 players and a first-round pick are going to Adam Foote's team. This is a massive, massive trade. Earlier today, I talked about Tristan Jarry going to Edmonton and the Oilers finally being rid of Stuart Skinner. And me feeling like in some small way, Edmonton looking at what the Avalanche are doing, what the Dallas Stars are doing, and saying, we got to do something. We got to do something, because if we solidify that position with Draisaitl and McDavid and the rest of our cast of characters, we might be able to hang with those teams. I think they believe they can hang with those teams. I have to think that Minnesota, that is even more the case. Minnesota has played great hockey lately. Great hockey. They can't make up a single bit of ground on Dallas and Colorado, because those two teams just aren't losing. And if they lose, they don't lose in regulation. So they at least pick up a point. Minnesota right now is sitting on 39 points. If they were in the Pacific, they would be tied for the divisional lead with Vegas. But they play in the Central, and they are 8 points back of second and 12 points back of first. The Minnesota Wild are 7-2-1 in their last 10. By any measure, that is great hockey, and they can't get any closer to Dallas and Colorado. This is Minnesota saying, we just signed Kirill Kaprizov to a budget-busting contract. And we're playing very well. We got to go all in. We got to go. I know Dallas is where they are. Colorado's where they are. We got to get a piece to help us compete with those teams. You could already argue the 3 best teams in hockey reside in the Central Division. I think maybe that's cemented. I think at this point you have to put Minnesota with the addition of Quinn Hughes above Vegas. Now, don't get me wrong, Vegas is still a very good hockey team, an elite hockey team. But there are like 2 levels to elite in the NHL right now. There's Dallas, Colorado elite, and there's Minnesota, Vegas elite. And this is Minnesota trying to separate themselves from Vegas and get closer to Dallas and Colorado. But Quinn Hughes on his way from Vancouver to Minnesota. And now the center of the hockey universe resides in the Central Division with the way Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota have been playing, and now Minnesota adds Quinn Hughes. And don't forget, too, Connor Bedard has the Blackhawks looking better than they have in years. That is a huge, huge spread. Central Division just got even more fun. And if you are, I mean, Winnipeg can talk themselves into when we get back Connor Hellebuck, we'll be okay. But they got 29 points. One rough week and another Avalanche-like week, and the Avs could be doubling up the Jets. And the thing is, prior to Christmas or January 1, you got to be in the position that you want to be, right? If you're going for a division, if that's your goal, you got to be within striking distance of the division. You know, the St. Louis Blues of all those years ago are the exception that proves you can't turn it on when the calendar turns and expect to go from, not even a wild card team to battling for the division. So I don't know that Winnipeg, even with Connor Hellebuck, is in the position that they need to be in. But that's what the first half of the NHL season is, or the unofficial first half of the season, leading up through the holidays, is getting within striking distance of whatever your goal is. Playoff spot, division, President's Trophy. You got to be within reach of that. You don't have to be leading it, but you got to be within reach of it. Because it just becomes a math problem. They're not the point. It's never the point. It's the amount of teams that you have to jump over. And right now, the Jets would have to jump 3 teams or 2 teams if they wanted to get a wild card. Well, wait. You have to do. No, it'd be more than that. Avs, Stars, Wild. Golden Knights, Ducks, Kings. And then you'd have 2 wild cards, which would be Edmonton and San Jose. The 2 teams that the Jets would have to jump over in the Central, those aren't even teams that currently hold wild card spots in Utah and Chicago. But at any rate, getting back to what this is about, you have the Stars and the Avs pulling away from everyone, and you have 2 other teams that liken themselves to be contenders making significant moves today. The Oilers trading Stuart Skinner for Tristan Jarry. It's a little bit of a wing and a prayer here. It's more of an addition by subtraction, a change of scenery bet that the Oilers are making. Tristan Jarry isn't the goalie equivalent of Quinn Hughes. But this is Edmonton making a move to try and solidify themselves and get them back in the conversation with Dallas and Colorado, and then have an even more significant move with Quinn Hughes being traded from Vancouver to Minnesota for 3 players and a first-round pick. This NHL season's been fun. Already has been. That is all I got for you. Ending the show on a high note. We get a lot of breaking news during the show. But we'll have to leave it there. Again, congratulations to Dylan Arocho, the outstanding basketball player from Harrison. He is our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week. Look for me to get Dylan on the show here in the near future. Don't forget to submit your nominations for next week at extrasports1300.com. No Air Force hockey tonight, as you might come to expect. They are done for the holidays. There will be Air Force tomorrow afternoon if you would like to join me. I'll have their final non-conference game right here on Extra Sports 1300 with coverage starting at big weekend in the NFL. We'll be back to talk about it all, most notably Broncos and Packers Monday at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.